9 days until the big game. Seahawks and Patriots going head-to-head in Santa Clara. It's Seattle's defense that's been in the spotlight all season, and they're ready to bring that momentum to the biggest stage. New on NFL Live, Seahawks head coach Mike Macdonald met with the media moments ago, speaking about the importance of his defensive line heading into Super Bowl 60.
I think their attitude and their approach every day is a bit of a microcosm of how our whole team operates, and we've talked about this before, but that is a group that one has a lot of great players and a lot of leaders on our team, so they are going to be voices throughout the rest of the team, and they are going to be setting the example through a lot of the rest of the guys on the team. And if they operate like that, and they put the actions behind how we say we want to operate, that's powerful for the rest of the team. So I think that's been a critical part of our team's success this year has been, how our D-line operates.
I agree. The Seahawks defense has been excellent all season, including the playoffs. Seattle's D ranks first in points per game, yards per rush, and third down percentage. Nothing easy for their opponents, right? This is the fewest points they've allowed since 2014, which was the year of their last Super Bowl. Marcus, Drake Maye has been using his legs to make plays all season. He's done it in the postseason as well. How can Seattle try to slow down that part of his game?
Yeah, the communication on the interior, Boogie, with these defensive tackles and making sure that they're covering for each other, outside ends, making sure you're not getting too high past him and allowing him to duck under and use his legs as well. Look, this has been a very opportunistic offense. Now, they've had adverse weather conditions, and obviously they played Houston in the first playoff game, which gave them a lot of problems. They've been explosive and opportunistic at times. Last week, we saw Drake Maye legs, quite frankly, win the game offensively for the New England Patriots. This is a different animal with Seattle. They're big, they're athletic, and they really have a great understanding of where to be and how to track the football. That's going to be something that they're going to have to pay attention to. So I'm looking forward to seeing the plan from the Seattle Seahawks, because you have to have one when you have athletic quarterbacks like this. And then also, when you start thinking about the Super Bowl, right? This is it. This is the last game that you have to play in this particular season. So from Mike Macdonald's perspective, what new looks and nuance will you have up front, pressure-wise and game calling-wise from a defensive line perspective, will be implemented in this game? A lot of coaches talk about, well, we don't want to change much. Well, you better have something that they haven't seen all season long. And with the players and personnel that Seattle has, I think they can get a lot accomplished in that vein.
Yeah, I think you're smart to mention the defensive tackles, because we know that's where Drake Maye in particular likes to scramble, is through the teeth of the defense. Yep. So you've talked about his legs. I'm going to talk about his arm here. I think he's going to have to throw the ball deep for them to win this one. And, of course, Drake Maye was arguably the best deep passer in the NFL this season, led the entire league in tight window completions, throwing downfield. But on the flip side, the Seattle Seahawks defense allowed the second most yards on tight window completions downfield and just 2.1 yards per attempt. So this is a real strength on strength thing. I think it's going to come down to who wins some of those 50-50 balls. We just saw in this game against Seattle, while Matthew Stafford was able to throw on them in those high leverage moments, Eamon Witherspoon, Woolen were able to break up passes. So when you get that matchup, Diggs on Witherspoon downfield or Kayshon Boutte on Woolen, if it's a 50-50 ball and I trust Drake Maye to put it in the right place, who's going to come down with it? Can you win? And I really think those 50-50 matchups between the Patriots receivers and the Seattle DBs are going to be massive.
Yes, this is the worst show in the world to be third on, but it's okay. I'll go.
You drew the short straw this segment.
Yeah, all the time. It's all the time. By the time you go third, all of the smart stuff has been taken. Now you're just regurgitating things, just like I just listened in the production meeting and stole their notes. But I think that's the most important piece when Seattle's on defense. And I look at Josh Jobe and Reek Woolen. You don't see this happening a lot to Devin Witherspoon. There was obviously the inside release to Puka, and then, we saw the post corner to Devontae as well on Witherspoon, but so many times it's going to be on Jobe and Woolen down the field to make these one-on-one plays. We watched last week as Patrick Surtain II shut down two deep balls, a deep post and a go ball to Kayshon Boutte, and the difference that made in the game. If you go to the week prior, Kamari Lassiter was targeted 4 or 5 times he came up with the plays. Derek Stingley did not. If you take away the chunk plays on the outside, I think it's going to be extremely difficult for New England to move the football.
Yeah, especially, we will talk about this a lot in the coming weeks, but the things tied together. I think Seattle's going to play a lot of zone defense, right? They're not going to allow Drake Maye to scramble on them. And I do think there's going to be those opportunities that you've seen Maye take advantage of all year to, when the Seahawks are playing quarters or cover 6, throw over the top because you get the one-on-one with the corner. I know I've mentioned that a lot. I do think those opportunities will be there. And while most quarterbacks this season did not connect on them versus Seattle, Drake Maye has to in this game. He has to, I believe, for them to win.
All right, as Mina said, we're going to be on this game all next week, all into the lead up, and so much more coming your way on this show that you can catch us at Santa Clara. But time for one more thing. This is really exciting. We are so busy this month, starting off with the hiring of Matt Ryan, who led the searches for a new coach and GM, head coach, I should say. 1 week later, Atlanta found their man in Kevin Stefanski. Then on Thursday, the Falcons announced Ian Cunningham as their new GM. Marcus, what should be the first order of business in Atlanta now that they've got this new front office in place?
Bijan Robinson contract. That's number one, okay? And usually it's rare we talk about that before we get to the quarterback. But that should be first and foremost of how can we lock down arguably the most dynamic offensive player in the league. And then the other part is quarterback, obviously. Like we know if Michael Penix is going to be the guy, that evaluation needs to happen. And I know people are talking about Kirk Cousins and potentially him being the guy going forward. And maybe he will with Michael Penix's injury. But the quarterback position, as we talked about earlier in the show with Minnesota, is going to be the most prevalent thing. So get Bijan contract done, figure out a way to get that done, and then figure out if Michael Penix is your future or if you need to draft or be in positioning to try to get a quarterback that can carry you into the future with this new GM and head coaching situation.
I think the truth is with the quarterback position, they're probably going to have to do both because it'll be possible for them to fully evaluate Penix at this point, right, coming off of the injury. And so you want to give him a chance, but you also have to bring in some form of competition without a lot of money to spend at the position, as so many teams are in the same position. So that's something that he's going to have to do, whether that's in the draft or free agency. They're going to have to do those evaluations pretty quick. As far as the rest of the roster goes, I would also add there's a few free agents that are pretty important players. Caden Ellis, one of my favorite players to watch in the NFL, linebacker / pass rusher, is a free agent. And they got to figure out what's going to happen with Kyle Pitts, who, you know, has had such an up and down NFL career, but has flashed enough to where you do seriously want to consider bringing him back. So it's a good roster. There's from free agents, but nothing, of course, matters more than figuring out what they're going to do at quarterback.
Yeah, interesting, Mina. I talked to Kyle Pitts at the end of the season. We had the Falcons on Monday Night Football, and he felt like even toward the end, it was more of an audition to see if the rest of the NFL would maybe want to make a move for him. He did, of course, say all the right things, like he liked being in Atlanta, but he was very aware that he may be on the move. Caden Ellis, by the way, they got to hold on to him. He's like the heartbeat of this defense. New on NFL Live, let's get to this. Mike McCarthy was on Pat McAfee's show today, spoke about keeping a winning tradition going in Pittsburgh.
It's my responsibility to show up here every day and win, and that's just the way I've always gone about it. Because this is a 12-month job that you have to, there's always something to do. There's always a video to watch. There's always a conversation to have. There's always things that it's sort of planning and getting ready for the next day. At the end of the day, you're guaranteed 17 games. This is not a start over opportunity at all, and I think that's clear. I mean, it's a football team that in the playoffs last year, so to categorize it, it's a playoff roster.
So technically he's right. RC, do you agree that the Steelers have a playoff roster?
I mean, yeah, the Steelers have a roster that's capable of making the playoffs, but it's not one of those rosters that's a Super Bowl contender. And I think that's what's important in Pittsburgh. And so it's how many years will you just be good enough? Or is Mike McCarthy that head coach that can allow you to take that next step? And the first question has to be, who will be your quarterback? The one thing that people miss who were saying fire Mike Tomlin or we haven't had playoff success was that they never drafted early enough to get a quarterback. The reason that Ben Roethlisberger had such a successful tenure under Coach Cowher and Mike Tomlin was because they picked in the top 12 of the draft. Mike Tomlin only picked in that position one time, and they moved up to get Devin Bush. And so if Mike McCarthy is going to be a guy that's not going to settle for a rebuild, can he be the dude to allow them to take one more step than they have in the last decade and actually win a playoff game with this roster?
And of course, that question's still looming out there. Can they get Aaron Rodgers? McCarthy did say earlier in the week that he had talked to him, but that's kind of all we know. All right, still to come. We're just 9 days away from Super Bowl 60. We've got the latest from Seahawks head coach Mike Macdonald and why Mina and Marcus are buying into the Seahawks' dark side against Drake Maye. That's what they call their defense. Coming your way next on NFL Live.